All right, here we are. Let's see if anybody shows up here. In the meantime, I've got a few questions from Instagram that I can tackle. Oh, I got a thumbs up. This says, on Chrono 24, the vast majority of secondhand FPJ, Francois-Paul Journe, are in the USA. Any idea why? No. I think I think the US is probably a really strong market for Journe. And it's definitely the biggest secondary market in the world. So I guess it makes sense that the most pre-owned Journe would be here. But I don't know of any sort of like conspiracy or anything. Wow, Romania. Good evening, UK. All right, we're getting some international audience here. Let's take another from Instagram. One watch under 100 grand. What do you buy? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, this is interesting. The watch in my personal collection that I wear the most, the retail of it is over 100, but secondary is under 100, and that would be my Urwerk 210. There's a lot of Urwerk that you can pick up for under 100 grand, and they're really just super cool and fun. But I don't know if this question means like you can only have one watch, because in that case, I assume want something more versatile, maybe like a Royal Oak Perpetual or something on a bracelet if I was really forced to only have one watch and I could only spend 100 grand. But otherwise, if it's just like one cool watch, yeah, for me, it'd probably be that Urwerk. If I wanted to go more classic, I may go something like Kari Voutilainen. That's probably where I'd go. Oh man, at the pub, UK here. Will this be uploaded later? Yeah, man, these go onto the channel and you can watch it anytime. So if you have a question, ask it and I'll try to answer it, and you can watch it later. Otherwise, if you just want to watch the answers, then go for it. This guy says Cartier ring and Grubel 4C. Damn! This is a Cartier ring. It's my wedding ring. It is one of these Trinity rings, but it's kind of cool because it's, instead of being white, yellow, and rose gold, it's got 2 white bands and a black ceramic band. I've never seen this anywhere else, and I think I don't know, I like it. These are super comfortable to wear. And this is not a Grubel 4C. This is my unique Gronfeld Parallax Tourbillon. It's the only one ever made in a titanium case and with blued screws here. So cool watch, really, really, really nice to wear. That's what I'm wearing today. Okay, new Moser. Great. This was the next one I was going to get to anyway from Instagram. I love this new Moser. For any of you who haven't seen it, Moser released a sport watch yesterday. It's stainless steel. It's got sort of like a bullhead chronograph look with an integrated bracelet. And I don't know, I guess it's been a little bit controversial, but I have loved it the second I saw it. I love bullhead chronographs. I had a really awesome Omega that I regret selling. I like these kind of weird case shapes, and I really like this bracelet style. It's sort of like the Porsche design, the IWCs from the early 90s, kind of. That's what it brings to mind, but I'm sure it's nicer quality. I'm sure the watch feels good. And then the movement is that Agenor chronograph that's in the Singer and something else, which is just a really, really, really stellar chronograph movement made by Agenor, which is Jean-Marc Viderecht's company. For those of you who don't know, he did HM2 and HM3 for MB&F, and they do a lot of really cool complications, all those really poetic kind of Van Cleef and Arpels ladies watches, and a lot of the Winston stuff. His thing is normally jump hours. He had a patented jump mechanism that's really awesome, but this chronograph is spectacular, and it's pretty cool because it's got all the looks of a manual wind chronograph. Like, you see all the little gears and bits and all the really cool things that we love about like the Lange Datograph and all these manual wind chronos, but it's actually an automatic. And the way they did that was they put the rotor, they sort of sandwiched it between the front and the back. So you don't actually see the rotor, because rotors are boring, but it does wind. So this is sort of the perfect everyday watch to me. I love it. Did I do a watchmaking course? No, I didn't. I'm not a watchmaker. I know just enough technical stuff because when I come across something, I'm curious and I like to kind of figure out how it works. But I'm not an expert on these sorts of things. Let me see if I can get a little bit more light in here. Oh, does that help, or it's too harsh? That's pretty harsh. I've got this new studio here, so hopefully I can make a lot more videos, but I'm still kind of getting used to the light. That's a little bit better. Cool. Let's go back to these Insta questions. Hi, your thoughts about the Glasuta original, especially Pano Reserve and Pano Lunar? I don't do a lot of Glasuta. I do have one of the most popular videos actually that I've ever made is the pantograph, or what was it, the pantograph? I forget what it was actually. It was one of the Glasutas and Longa, and I compared the two of them. And people really like that video. You may want to go back and watch that. They seem like a really good value for money brand to me, but I'm not super partial to big brand stuff. I would stay out of the Swatch Group and put my money towards independents. This from Instagram. I put up a Q&A box in my stories last night. I'm going to start doing that before I do these Q&As, so you can submit them on there, and then I answer them here if you can't, make it to 10 a.m. Pacific time Q&A. So this guy says 3 10K watches or 1 30K watch. This is an easy one. I would do 1 30K watch. I would always do quality over quantity when it comes to watches. But in addition, with these price points, 10 is really hard to get good stuff, but 30, you can get a lot of really cool watches. So I would definitely do that. Opinion on Christophe Claret Extreme 1. I don't really have an opinion. The Claret stuff is really nicely done. He's a sort of legend in the industry, obviously, and an incredible movement constructor. They tend to be sort of like complicated for complication's sake, and the aesthetics aren't 100% my bag usually. So it's not like my favorite, but if you like it, it's obviously really cool. I can't knock it. This is a Grand Sonnery question. This is what I like. Would I buy it only from Dufour or also from Grubel? Oh my God, the Grubel Grand Sonnery is like unbelievable watch. I have a friend who has one, and it's like the minute repeater on it is one of the best sounding repeaters I've ever heard. And it has a lot of really, really cool innovations. I think it's a super underrated watch because a lot of people don't really understand chiming watches. They don't understand Grand Sonneries especially. And of course, the watch is super expensive and ultra rare, so you just don't see them. But that's easily one of my absolute grails from the past several years. But nothing's like a Sonnery Dufour. I mean, he made 6 of them, I think, and then what an unbelievable grail that is. But just as a watch, like as an object, as a working mechanism, I think the Grubel's better. It sounds better. It has a lot of movement innovation, but historically, you can't beat a Dufour Sonnery. I like ALS. That's a Lange and Son Datograph Perpetual. My view on it, it's a great watch. Again, I would always put my money towards independents rather than bigger brands. But if you like Lange, buy. You can't go wrong with the Datograph Perpetual. All the versions are beautiful. I don't love a manual winding perpetual calendar personally. I find them a bit of a pain. However, if I were going to really wear a watch super often, like if I were like a one watch kind of guy, I could totally see a watch like that being my pick. Considering a Centigraph, model I'm most attracted to is aluminum, but I could get the titanium for the same budget. Well, they're both cool. The aluminum was the original one. It's extremely light and kind of interesting for that reason. The titanium is that grayer color, which I think looks, maybe it looks a little bit better. So those are the things. I guess the aluminum one is a little bit more interesting and unique. The titanium maybe looks a little bit better. I'm not sure. I do have a rose gold with silver dial Centigraph in my inventory right now. So if you want to go for one of the precious metal, high-end ones, I've got it for you. Favorite Urwerk model? My favorite to wear, as I mentioned earlier, I wear a 210 a lot. It's probably my most worn watch, and I absolutely love it. I've worn a lot of Urwerks, and the 210 is definitely my favorite to actually wear. But I think the 103 is the most important of their watches. The ones you made. What's my favorite watch release of 2019? I think I mentioned in the last one, I really don't think of watches in terms of like new releases or, it's not like movies to me where at the end of the year I go back and look at the Oscar winners and stuff. I don't think it matters when a watch was released. They're made to be forever, kind of. So I don't know. I don't even remember what came out in 2019. The DB28 yellow tones that I have in inventory is like awesome, mind-blowingly cool. You really have to see it in person to see how spectacular the finish on it is. The Grubel Sport Watch that was released in the last few weeks of the year is something I'm super, super excited about, but I don't know if it counts to be a 2019 release if they haven't delivered any of them. I don't know. Those are the first couple things that come to mind. General opinion on sapphire watches. They can be cool. I don't really understand the extreme price premium on them. I mean, I wouldn't personally, well, I can't, I don't have the money, but even if I did, I wouldn't pay $1 million for a sapphire case. So I don't know. I kind of like the Hublot ones. I know like watch people will crucify me for that, but I kind of like that you can get one of these sapphire Hublots for like 40 grand. And they're kind of cool. And weirdly enough, I really like the rainbow jeweled sapphire Hublot. Ew, that one's not, nobody's going to let me live that one down. How does a poor person overcome the want to own 70% of the watches being sold in the market? I don't know. I feel the same. I mean, I can't afford to own the watches that I really want to own. Luckily, I have a business, so it makes sense to buy and sell them for inventory. But, we all have our limits, and we all have stuff that we want that we can't have. So this is more of a philosophical, spiritual question. I can definitely tell you that, there are more important things than watches. It's I love this Coco Chanel quote. I think it may be in my Instagram bio, or at least it used to be. The quote is something like, the best things in life are free. The second best are very, very, very expensive. And I feel like that. Used Journe Resonance or Tourbillon or another model? Well, not another model. If you can afford either of those, you get one of those. But between the two, it's your personal preference. Okay, let's go back to the Instagram questions here. We got a little bit of slow here. Oh, I'll do this. Debethune Market, a friend inherited a DB28T. Wow. Okay, cool. He wants to sell it. Phillips London. I don't listen to these auction houses. Tell him to email me. How come you watch my channel and you didn't give this guy my email address? This is, you're not doing your job. I always say, share the videos, share. Help me out here, man. I'll buy his watch. Just have him email me. What watch have I never seen but would be on the top of my list to see in the flesh? I think the George Daniels Space Traveler 2. That's kind of my I use that as my all-time. If I could have any watch or clock, what would it be? But I've never seen it, so that would be the one. Unlimited money. What watch would I buy or have made for my personal collection? I think I've said it would be that Daniel Space Traveler 2, or it would be a Dufour Sonnerie, neither of which I can really get. If it would be something that I could order right now, I would probably do a Grubel Grund Sonnerie. How did I get into the business? I answer this question a lot, or I get it a lot. I have a video on this. It's in my channel. Just look back. I explain the whole thing. Where do I get my information on new models? I don't know. I actually, like I just said earlier, I don't pay that much attention to new. I don't really care what the new models are that much. So I'm not always like looking. I'm not going to order the newest thing anyway. I sell mainly pre-owned watches. So I get my information where everybody else does, on Instagram or, whatever. If something's good, it tends to get my attention somehow. Hi, and Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to all you guys. I'm looking forward to this year. I really think that, as I said in my last video, it's a fun time to be in independent watches, and there's just really great stuff and a lot of people getting interested, and there's finally some good information out there, and so that's exciting to me. What do I think about the Omega pricing of the caliber 321? I don't really have an opinion on this specific watch, but I do have an opinion on these in general. What I don't understand, and I'm totally not a vintage guy. I don't deal in vintage. I have a few vintage watches myself that I got for reasonable money, and I just find them to be fun. I don't really understand why somebody would buy a reissue for anywhere near the same price that they can buy an original one for. So for example, I have a 5402 A series Royal Oak on my website right now. The price isn't really that much more than a 15202 new AP Royal Oak would be. And it's so much more significant historically. I guess I don't get it. So the same with this 321, why not just buy a nice Ed White Speedmaster for 13, 14, 15 grand? You can get a really, really nice one. I don't know. I guess I don't really understand it. I do understand that watches have to be expensive now with the way they work. I mean, look at Omega. Look at just the marketing push that they did on that watch. Like, that costs tons and tons of money and has to be amortized over these. And then they sell to their retailers at 45 off or something like that. And there's all these costs that have to go into these. So it doesn't surprise me when something comes out at 13 or 14 grand. But for my money, just give me an original like 65 Ed White. I'm looking here. This question about the Moser Streamliner, I did answer it. I love it. Go back 5 minutes and you'll see the answer. Do I still have the Leica? Camera questions. I have a Leica. I have a Leica Q that I use for most of my wrist shots on Instagram. It's great for wrist shots. I just got an Olympus EM1 Mark II that is, I'm really loving it so far. If you look at any of the tight macros that I've shot in the last week or so, those were all with that camera. Normally my main camera is a Sony A7R III, but I'm using this Olympus more and more right now, and maybe it'll be able to replace my Leica. But I won't do too much camera stuff because I don't know how interested everybody is. Let's say you have a range of, say, 5 watches you're keen on but can only purchase one. How would you go about deciding it, assuming you won't need to sleep on the streets after the purchase? Well, I would just get the one that I like the best, and also that makes the most sense to buy at that moment, right? Like if the two that I were looking at were, let's say I was looking at an Urwerk 103 and a Patek 5711 or something like that, I would just buy the Urwerk now because they're around and at really good deals historically. There's not a ton of heat around them, whereas the Nautilus has, doubled in price in the last year or so, and they're already like coming down. So spend your money on the one now, get the best watch at the best price that you can get, and then get the other one when you can and when the market is a little bit more conducive to that. Carlos says the GF on your wrist is incredible. GF, I always think of as Grubel Forsey. Maybe you mean Gronfeld, but this is a Gronfeld. It's a Gronfeld tourbillon piece unique in titanium. I showed it a little bit earlier, but there it is for another wrist check. Okay, let's go back here. Lane watches? I actually don't know Lane watches, John. I'll have to take a look. Have I gotten to check out J.N. Shapiro watches or visit the workshop? I think I met him a few years ago and we've chatted a little bit, but I haven't seen them recently. And I should go check out his workshop and do a little bit more of a deep dive on that. The engine turning stuff that he's doing is really interesting. He looks to be cranking out pretty high quality down there. As far as the watches themselves, I don't really know, but I love to see people bringing back these kind of ancient crafts. Opinion on David Cando. I've never seen one in person, so I don't have a really strong opinion. I think they're cool. I mean, I could totally see really liking one, but they just haven't come across my desk. How are the independent brands affected if the owner sells out or leaves the company? This is interesting. I mean, I think it depends on each company and it depends where they are in the marketplace. You know, like I think for a company that's still really establishing itself, like Lang & Hein, then it's pretty damaging for Marco to leave because he really is the company basically. But if you take somebody like Jorn or something, I think that when Francois Paul leaves, that company will be totally fine. So it just depends. Speaking of independents losing staff, any thoughts on Oxen Jr.'s situation? Yeah, it's sad to me. They're one of my favorite brands. I really like that. I don't know the inside scoop on what happened. Something obviously happened, and it didn't look good. I don't think that their way of handling it was necessarily that great. It looked kind of spiteful. It was like, you know, you see your friends go through a bad breakup and it's like, sometimes you want to just keep things to yourself, you know? But hopefully they can resurrect something of it. I own an Oxen Jr. myself that I customized for my son. And I don't know, it's important to me. So I hope they do something good. Currently saving for a Voutilainen. Is there much liquidity in the Voutilainen market? I mean, these are tiny independents. The liquidity? Having trouble with that one today. I don't know. Maybe I didn't have enough coffee yet. The liquidity and stuff like this really resides in people like me. This is what I do in the market is provide a little bit of liquidity to these little brands that if you go, you know, you take your watch down to 47th Street or something, they're not going to touch. So yeah, I buy them, I sell them. They have liquidity to me, but maybe not to your local jeweler. But when you're ready for a Voutilainen, email me. I don't know. You guys are doing all this business and not with me. I don't know why. Email me. I'll help you. Reliability and ability to service them for independents. I never have watches break. Very, very, very extremely rarely do I have to deal with service. In my experience, all these watches work quite well. You're talking about people who've put their life's work into these pieces, and so they want them to be of high quality. Lots of times they have their name on the dial, so they care. And usually when you deal with service, they actually care, which is a big change to like some of the big brands where they act like you're bothering them because their watch broke that you paid a lot of money for and you want to get fixed. And now it's like you're personally offending them by expecting them to fix it. So in general, I think that service with independence is actually much, much, much better than the bigger brands. Quality control is generally very, very good. And in terms of servicing way down the line, a generation later, almost all of these guys are watchmakers or have watchmakers and are thinking about this. They're putting parts aside, but almost, any good watchmaker should be able to remake parts if necessary also. So I wouldn't be that concerned. I certainly don't buy a watch thinking about servicing it in 80 years. So yeah, I don't know. What's my take on polished vintage pieces? I really can't speak that much to vintage. I'm not a vintage expert. Vintage bugs me. Every vintage watch I assume has been polished because watches were polished. That's what people did with watches. And I think what people still should do. This idea of not wanting to polish a watch is insane to me. You should just make sure that somebody good polishes it. But again, I'm not a vintage expert. Leave me out of the vintage stuff. This attention on details that in my mind don't matter is annoying to me. Thoughts on Hajime Asaoka? I've also not seen any of those watches in person, and I haven't dealt with him, so I can't speak to them. But there are collectors that I really respect that think he's totally great. I got to go by them. Ooh, hey, and Happy New Year from the only female here. Hi, Ella. I think women should get more into watches. I think they just haven't been marketed to correctly. We have decades of these watch companies thinking that women only want tiny diamond encrusted watches and they're not going to market anything else to them. And so it's going to take a while for the industry to catch up. But there's no reason that a woman couldn't wear this Gronfeld that I have on my wrist or almost any other watch in my safe. And in fact, oversized watches, I think, look cool on women in general. My wife, actually, if you look on my Instagram from last weekend, she borrowed my De Bethune DB28 Digital, which is not a small watch, and it looked awesome on her. So I'd love to see more women into this area. Any experience with Ming? I know Ming very well. He and I actually worked on a unique piece together a few years ago. And he's a really talented guy. And I love to see what's happening with his brand. I haven't actually personally seen one in person. I love that World Time. If somebody gave me one as a gift, I would definitely accept it. But I don't know. They're not the type of thing that I would normally buy and sell. They're a little cheaper than my usual market, but I think they're awesome for what they cost. To be able to get something that is unique like that, it seems like a really cool value proposition, and I'm glad that they exist. Gaurav, I talked a little bit about Moser earlier in the video, their new watch specifically. I also have that purple special edition one on my website in inventory. They're really cool watches. Really, again, good value for money, really beautiful. I think I told a story in one of these videos of a couple years ago being at a Sotheby's auction, and this guy down the row from me was wearing a Moser, and it just looked so stunning on him. It's one of the few watches that has really caught my eye in the last few years. So I like Moser. What do I think about Bechet? I, again, haven't seen them in person. I don't even know how to pronounce it. I do know what you're talking about, but I don't really have an opinion on it. Sorry. What's the process like in getting a unique piece? I haven't done this that much. It's difficult with Switzerland always. It's a little bit, a little bit tricky the way that they work. But it depends on the company. Every company has a different way of dealing with things. I don't know. Seems cool. I'm not very patient personally, so it's hard for me. Ella says, been wearing this AP Millenary. Awesome. Yeah, the Millenary looks great on a smaller wrist. It's a way to get a pretty big case, but because it's elongated, it looks awesome. So that's cool. Thoughts on Grubel quads? Just adding an axis of rotation, then make the, I don't know. That seems like splitting hairs to me. I don't really care. The Grubel quads are awesome. I've had a few. You can see my videos on them to see what exactly I think. Now, what counts as a double and a quad and a gyro and a this? I don't know. I'm not interested in semantics like that personally. Okay, guys, I'm gonna cut it here, even though Ella's left me with an ellipsis down there in the in the chat, but it's already been over a half hour. So I'm gonna let it go here. But save your questions. Mohammed, that's a good question. Can you hit it next Friday for me? I'm gonna get out of it. Streamliner I talked about earlier. I gotta go, guys. Thanks.